Hello, and welcome to Historical Fiction with Kviatoslav. At the moment, I'm discussing one of the best authors of historical fiction from the 20th century, an author by the name of Zoe Ouldenbourg. There, um, Miss Oldenburg was an actual medieval historian and a historian of the finest order. In fact, I first discovered Miss Oldenburg from her probably most famous work, which is a work of nonfiction called The Crusades, which is a massive tome, over, let's see how many pages, yeah, about 700 pages there, written in 1966. And it's an extremely well researched book about detailing primarily the First, Second, and Third Crusades in the Kingdom of Jerusalem. And it's an excellent work. She drew on lots and lots of primary sources there, and I highly recommend it to anyone who's interested in the Crusade. In fact, I learned a great deal of detail that I really wasn't exposed to in some other uh, works on the period there. So it's a high recommendation there. Now, I know a little bit about the background of Miss Oldenburg. She was actually born in St. Petersburg prior to the October Revolution, and her family apparently escaped and relocated to southern France, where she became an academic and a historian there. So her works were all originally in French, and she took a particular interest in the medieval period and also the Languedoc, or the southern French period there, which, if you know your history, was a highly kind of contentious area in during the Crusades there. And not only was she a historian of the First Order, but she also wrote a number of historical fiction novels from that time period. So the first one that I read might be her most famous work of historical fiction, which goes by the title of The World Is Not Enough, which is a fantastic title. You might recognize it as later being stolen for a James Bond film there, but a really excellent work. Again, very long, very thick, very detailed there. And this is the story actually of a family from the Languedoc, from southern France, of Anisu and Alice there. It's presented as a bit of a romance because they are a married couple, but it's definitely on the back cover. They say powerfully evoking the brutality, squalor, beauty, and pageantry of Europe in the Middle Ages, and one of the most compelling love stories in all of literature there. I wouldn't necessarily call it a love story there, although there is definitely a romantic element to it. But this is, I would recommend all of her novels there, but that does come with a bit of a caveat in that Miss Oldenburg pulls no punches. The reality of her world is extremely brutal and extremely bleak. And in particular, there are no, what I would say, are good characters. There's no one in particular to root for. Even the main characters in this one, Anseo and Alice, are not particularly good people, and nor are their rivals and so on. In this case, you just follow a family. And if you're the kind of person who needs someone to root for in your fiction, then I would not recommend her novels to you. However, if you would like a very realistic, brutal picture of the time period there, which does not try to color code it in any way or anything like that, then I would definitely say this novel is for you. There was a follow-up novel, a sequel, which is called The Cornerstone, which essentially goes 30 years into, or 20 years into the future, features a few of the characters featured in the original one there, but again, it's just quite as brutal there. I said it focuses mainly on southern France, but it also involves the Crusades to an extent, and some pilgrimages and so on there. And in a lot of ways, it's not like a story, it's more of a period of life of these characters there. Both The World Is Not Enough and The Cornerstone follow those, in that there's not a beginning and an end to the novel. It basically follows. It's much more of the tale of the lives of these people, but those lives are interesting, and you will learn a lot from her novels there. Um, the final one of her novels that I've read is called The Heirs of the Kingdom, which actually takes on a different approach. This is a novel set in the period of the First Crusade, the only successful crusade, and it actually follows a kind of group of Flemish weavers, because during the First Crusade there were a number of peasants who joined along with the kind of religious fervor of the time. And in that time, I think they originally start out as part of the People's Crusade, which were the peasants who left early, uh, and the this is, in a way, it might be one of the best novels on the Crusades there, in that it does not follow any of the nobles. It at no point does it mention Godfrey de Bouillon or Bohemond of Taranto or anything like that. It shows you the Crusade completely from the perspective of a peasant, people who were being pulled along through a combination of religious fervor and desire and so on there, and really shows the absolute brutality of what the people who were engaged on the crusade must have gone through. And I won't try to give too many spoilers, but it really is almost difficult to read, in that you find that the many of the characters, for example, the characters who are uh, less honest and more brutal, often find themselves coming to the forefront, where the pure and the innocent characters find themselves beaten down. And Miss Oldenburg has no happy endings there. To give kind of another spoiler there, the sheer brutality. In fact, this book I've read once, and I'm hesitant to read it again, because many times as I was reading it, one of the things she does is the characters go through a kind of religious fervor as the conditions become more difficult, as they travel, the miles and kilometers through hostile lands. They go through a kind of religious fervor, and sometimes when I was reading it, I almost found myself getting distracted, because the passages would descend into this kind of almost religious nonsense. I mean, it's a really extremely interesting example of the way that you can experience to some extent what the characters were going through. But for that reason, I've never actually picked up the novel again to read it. I'd really have to be in a certain mood. And overall, I really do recommend Miss Oldenburg's, because her writing and her prose is excellent. But it is that recommendation with that caveat. If you're the kind of person who likes things to be a bit bright and sunnier, and you like heroes to root for, then she's definitely not an author that I would suggest that you seek out. But if you are interested in the more more realistic bit of historical fiction, then I would give her a definite recommend. Thanks for your time.